you see me now? Can you hear me? Hi, Sina. Can you see and hear me? My hand in the little chicken thing. And can you hear me through the speakers or not? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, so it seems like everybody can see and hear me. I was just testing with my subject advisors. I want to welcome you to this afternoon's lesson. Thank you for sitting in and being here on a Friday afternoon. I know when you're young, that's not very easy, but we all need to try and help you to do well in our prelim exams. This session is for learners who did not do well in the June exams. Maybe you failed or maybe you did very poorly. I'm going to see how I'm going to show you some ways in which you can help, quickly acquire the knowledge that you need to have. We're going to look at paper 1 this afternoon, right? And the first thing that I want to tell you is the exam guideline, the importance of the exam guideline. People, exam guidelines is extremely important for you as a grade 12 learner, right? So you need to have it with you. If you don't have it, get it from your teacher, but this is something you need, right? And also, when you study, you use it as a checklist. So, for example, here we have now reproduction in vertebrates. It's only 8 marks. It's paper 1. Right. And there they tell you exactly what you need to know. So when you've finished studying this terminology, you tick it off. You tick it off. An amniotic egg, you tick it off. Right. So that you know everything here. Then you go to human reproduction, paper 1, 41 marks. What must you know there? It tells you. Male reproductive system, all these parts of the male. If you finish with it, you tick it off. So when you study, you need to keep this next to you as a guideline, right? That's what it is. It's exam guideline. And it tells you exactly what to study. So you tick it off, tick it off, tick it off, so that when you finish, you know you've covered everything. Things like spermatogenesis, oogenesis, the examiners ask it, when they ask it, the memo is exactly what you see here. Exactly, word for word. Right. So you study it from here. Okay. Okay, so if you can see that the human nervous system, can you see it's 45 marks in paper 1? 54 marks. So this is where we're going to start this afternoon. We're going to do the big topics, this one and this one, right? Reproduction. The others, I will just quickly show you something, but we won't go in detail, right? But this is the big topic. So you start with them, right? And then you'll see here's the endocrine system, homeostasis, paper 1, 34 marks. You've done this last year, but there's some here and there's something new that you need to know, right? But like I said, you tick it off, and then you know you've covered everything. They cannot ask you anything you don't know. But my recipe for quickly learning what you should know, I'm going to zoom out now, is the mind the gap. Right, so when we look at Mind the Gap, like I said, I'm going to start with the nervous system, the human nervous system. Here they tell you why do you have a nervous system and what does it do? Okay. And here's our central nervous system. There it says the central nervous system is, and you'll see there's short questions on that in the exam papers quite a lot. Okay. People, this picture, this diagram contains every single thing that you need to know about the brain. Can you see it's all in one? I've got reports that you cannot hear me. Let me just see if everybody can't hear me. Sorry about that. So you basically have to look at each structure, right? And then get the function here. So this is the structure. This is the function, right? So you will, for example, this part of the brain, the cerebrum, controls voluntary actions. Voluntary means you think about it. You think, I want to move my arm, I want to eat. You are controlling. Controlling means the yeah, well, controlling is controlling, right? So you're basically controlling your whole body, what you do with your body. Receives and interprets sensations from sense organs. Sense organs is your eye, ears, skin, whatever, and then higher thought processes. Now, this one is something some of you haven't used this year, ne? Higher thought processes. That is what you use when you're studying, right? So I can somewhat guess that some of you haven't used your higher thought processes quite nicely this year, ne? That's why we are sitting here this afternoon. Okay, so we need to use that. Now, how do we study? Let me show you quickly how you study this. Okay, firstly, you look at the brain. You can even if to help you, you can redraw the brain. Okay, I'm not going to do the whole thing now, right? But that's how you practice. Okay. Then you say, okay, cerebrum. Then you've read this now a couple of times and repeat it to yourself. Now you say, okay, what is the functions of the cerebrum? Okay, it's higher thought functions, controls voluntary actions, and it receives and interprets stimuli from the or impulses from the sensory organs. Okay, can you see? So you just repeat it for yourself, and then you close it, and then you repeat it again until you remember everything. I also want to make you aware of the fact that this is control, but this is coordinate. Cerebellum, the small brain here, it coordinates all voluntary movements. That means it links it up and makes sure it's all balanced, right? It's a different word. This word means something else than controls. And sometimes I catch you out in the multiple choice questions with this word coordinates. With the cerebellum, we talk about coordination. And here at the cerebrum, we talk about control. Right, let me just see if there's any other words here. Yeah, your hypothalamus, your control center for hunger, thirst, sleep, body temperature, and emotions. So when somebody breaks your heart, they're not breaking your heart, they are breaking your hypothalamus. All right. So, and your medulla oblongata controls involuntary actions. Okay, so just remember that. So can you see on one page, we have all the structures and functions of this structure. Right, now we go to the neuron. Neuron, very easy. You look at it, right? Okay. You take a little piece of paper and then you draw your own one. Eh? And this is a very ugly one I'm drawing now. And there's your little dendrites, right? And as you now draw your little dendrites and stuff, and there's your cell body, and there's the cytoplasm. This is the cell body. This is the nucleus. This is the dendrites. Now you go to your axon. Those are your axon end plates, right? And then around them are these bubbles, which we call the myelin sheath. That is like insulation, people. It's insulating your axon. Can you see? That's how we study structure and function. You draw it. You draw it. And now you're looking at the functions. I tell you, what's the axon? Transmits impulses away. So, yeah, you must also know that the impulse will come from here, 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 down. So the dendrites will take the impulse to the cell body. The axon is taking it away from the cell body. Can you see how easy is that, huh? 1 minute, 2 minutes, we know the neuron. Now, on this page, they tell you exactly the 3 types of neurons that you must know. The sensory one looks like a little alien. It's got an eye there, but it's not an eye, but it looks like an eye watching you, né? But it's not an eye. Please don't call it an eye. But that's the cell body. Can you see there's no dendrites on it? This is the dendrite. Okay, this is a dendrite and this is the axon. Okay, this is the one I just did, the motor neuron. And then this one here, this is your interneuron, and that's in the spinal cord and the brain, and it's in between your sensory neuron and your motor neuron. All right, and remember, motor neurons is always from the brain to the rest of the body, and sensory neuron is from the senses, your eye, ear, skin, to the central nervous system. Okay, then you go to the reflex arc. You see 3 pages, and we're already halfway. You need to know what's the difference between a reflex action and a reflex arc. It's telling you that. Yes, nice flow diagram of how it works, but this is the easiest way of knowing a reflex arc. You read this: receptor, a structure which receives a stimulus and converts it into an impulse, right? So can you see that they tell you exactly what happens where. So if you don't know, just read that and repeat it for yourself. So this will be your foot, your eye that's blinking, your finger that's burning, your foot in a thorn. Oh, they give you all kinds of context, right? And that will be your sensory neuron for the dorsal root, and that will be your, can you see the little thingy there? Here's your interneuron, right? Talk about the synapses. Synapses is between the neurons, the synapses, right? So the impulse will go over the synapse to the other neuron, or they call it synaptic gap, and that makes sure that the impulse will move in one direction only, okay? And this is your motor neuron. Motor neuron is always from the central nervous system to your muscles or whatever. Effector, that's what's telling you. Effector is effecting the change. It's your muscle, right? It will contract to move your foot away or your hand away or your eyelid to blink or whatever, right? So remember, this is reflex actions. Reflex actions are involuntary. You don't think about it, né? You don't think about it. It doesn't go to your brain first. It goes here to keep you safe, because if it has to go up to your brain and you have to think, ouch, your finger has burned, right? So that's why it's very quick. It's very fast. So by the time your finger is pulled away, it only goes to the brain. So that's a reflex arc. Now we go to the eye. Yo, this is a brilliant, brilliant diagram. Everything you need to know is here. Look at that. So, structure and function. Remember, take a little piece of paper, read it a couple of times, then repeat it, and then you close it. Right. So that you know exactly what is every part. I just want to tell you about cones. Cones is for color. That's the sensory cells here in your retina, right? That will be stimulated by color, right? And your yellow spot has got a lot of them. That's why your clearest vision is here. Here's your blind spot. Why is there a blind spot? Because there's no sensory cells there. Okay, and that's why, because that's where the nerve is, the optic nerve. So there in that little space there, there's no rods or cones. Rods is for black and white vision, and cones are for color. Just remember that. Okay, so, but you need to know the structure. They can ask you anything. They can ask you anything. There's no like short way of doing it, but if you know it, you know it. Then we get to these two. Let me just see if I can zoom out a little bit. Oh, I can. Okay. Children confuse this, or learners confuse it. I don't know why, but let's think about this first. Now, let's go to accommodation. Accommodation is about distance. Accommodation, distance, right? So you must remember that. This is all about distance. And it's all about the lens, right? It's about the lens becoming fatter and flatter, right? When the lens is more convex, it will break the light more. When it's more flat or less round, it will break the light less. Okay, so that's why the lens must be changed. Now, what's easy to do here is to remember the one side, the other side is the opposite. Now, what do I mean by sides? Distant vision, far vision. You're looking, and they will usually tell you, because they know now you know it's 6 meters. Nah. So they will say 7 meters. Then you know, okay, distance, flat lens, right? And then Also, another thing that children confuses this word here, ciliary muscle. Now, I'll show you now with pupillary, how can you remember which one is which one? This is not a circular muscle, it's a ciliary muscle, right? It's that little thingy there. Right. Now, a muscle, people, if you think about your arm muscle, right? There's your arm, right? And you've got a bicep. And there's your little fingers. Okay, I'm a terrible, terrible artist. I'm not an artist. Okay, I'm terrible. If you flex your bicep, if you flex your arm, right? You pull your arm in. Now this muscle will become very big, right? You know the guys who's gymming and exercising a lot, you know, if they flex their muscles, it's big, big and short, right? It's very big and short. Now, can you see? Yeah, this muscle, yeah, is contracted. It's big, right? On this side, the muscle is small, so it is relaxed. So when a muscle is relaxed, if you relax your arm again, right, this muscle becomes small, right? It becomes smaller and longer, right? Okay, just remember that. So when it's relaxed, it's small, and that, look at that. Now there's more space. Um, more space for the suspensory ligaments. And if there's more space for because it's fastened to these ligaments, it will pull on the ligaments, and then the ligaments will pull on the lens, and that's what's pulling the lens to become more flat. But I just want to show you, I did this the other, where's my little plastic bag now? Did I lose it? Oh boy, I lost it. I showed people the other day. I'm sorry, let me just, oh, there it is. I hope it works. Your lens of your eye. Okay, this is now, remember, we don't have bubbles in our lens, I just took a plastic bag with water in it. And this one has got a lot of folds. It's a very big bag. But anyhow, so this will be the lens. And this is now the suspensory ligaments, those little things there. And that's the lens. Now, when that muscle becomes small, it pulls on the suspensory ligaments. Can you see that it becomes less convex or less round? And the moment that muscle becomes big and it takes up more space, now there's less space. So what happens? It relaxes, or this ligaments, sorry, not relax. You must use the word slacken. It slackens. Can you see that your lens is now more round or more convex, right? So when it tightens, or tightens, it becomes less convex, and when it slacken, it becomes more convex, right? Because our lens have got this like a jelly stuff in it, right? So that's why it's movable. Okay, but we won't do this to our lenses, that will hurt. Anyhow, so I just want you to understand the process, because we just look at pictures and we don't always understand. So in this case, when you look far at a distance at more than 6 meters, this muscle will relax. The suspensory ligaments will then become taut. They are not muscles. You cannot say contract. Okay. Tension on the lens will increase. The lens will become less convex, and the light rays that comes through will be less reflected, so that they can end on the retina here at the back and focus on the retina. Now, this side is just the opposite. So the ciliary muscles will contract, the suspensory ligaments will slacken, the tension on the lens will be less, the lens will become more convex, and the light rays will be more bent and fall on the retina. Can you see it's just opposites from each other? And this is all about distance. Now, if we go to pupillary mechanism, the pupil is the thing you see when you look at somebody's eyes. You see that little black hole in the middle of a colored circle. Now, the colored circle can be your colors of your eyes. So it can be blue, black. No, not black. Sorry, no, but it's got black eyes. Brown, gray, or some people have very interesting eye. They got brown and little fleckles and whatever. Right. That's the round part. The round part here is the iris. And inside the iris is a hole. This is a hole. The pupil is a hole in your eye. It's got nothing in there. It's a hole. And the size of this hole is now determined by your iris. The iris has got two sets of muscles. Now remember, the iris is round. It's a circle. So this is how you're going to remember it. Radius, do you remember in math in primary school they taught you that every circle has a radius? Can you see these are radiuses? So it's radial muscles, ne? And this round things here is circular because it circles. This is the difference between this and that. Circular and radial is because it's a circle. Right. The length, there is no circle there. Okay. So this is how you will remember it. Now, the pupil needs to be small or constricted when you look at bright light. If you look at bright light and your pupil looks like this, all that light will go into your eye and fry your retina. You will just have a little fried piece of meat at the back of your eye. Nothing will happen ever again. Right. That's why I always tell you, don't look at the sun. Eh? So this must be very small in bright light. So only if a limited amount of light will go into your eye. You don't want to damage the retina. So in order to do that, remember these are now muscles, right? I don't know why people are calling me this time of the afternoon. Let me just switch this thing off. Right. So these radial muscles, what they do, when they relax, they become longer and smaller, longer. And as they become longer, they push the inner side of the iris down. They push it down. Can you see? They push it down. They push it down. So that makes it smaller. And your circular muscles contract. And what do they become if they contract muscles? They become fatter. Ne? So as they are fatter, they're also pushing this inner side down. Right. So the pupil becomes smaller. So radial muscles relax and they're antagonistic. Circular muscles will contract. They can't both relax and both contract. The one will relax and the other one will contract. Okay? The pupil constricts or becomes smaller and less light will enter your eye. And this side, what happens now, if it's dim light, you go into a dark room. Now your eye needs all the light it can get in that dim room because you're half blind. Né? So what happens now? The radial muscles contract. And when they become contracted, they become shorter, right? So they pull this inner side up. They pull it up. They pull it up. So your pupil becomes bigger. And if they are contracting, the circular muscles are relaxing, right? Your pupil widens and more light goes into your eye. So that's the pupillary mechanism and that's your accommodating. Do not confuse the two. You need to find a way. Pupil light. There's two L's there. Light is for pupil and accommodation is all about distance there. Okay, so don't confuse the two because that is what children are doing. We're picking it up after the June exams that you guys confused with. Then, oops, this is a part that children don't like to study, but the past 2 I think 3 years, they've been asking the visual defects that you're going to get. Now, firstly, short-sighted, what must you know? That you need a concave lens to fix it. Long-sightedness, you can only see far, not near objects. You need a convex lens. There's even pictures to remind you. Astigmatism is when your cornea is like very irregular, but on a microscopic level, you won't be able to see it with your eyes when you look at somebody, right? And they give them special glasses for that. And then cataracts, this is the important one. They asked it last year quite in detail. This is when the lens becomes cloudy, not the eye, the lens becomes cloudy, it's white, it becomes white. And what they do these days is they suck out your lens and they replace it with a plastic lens. Right, so you need to know these 4 things and how to fix it. All right, there's the eye. People finish class. Then we get to the ear. Can you see that the ear, there's 3 parts of the ear, the outer, middle, inner. And then they go into detail, structure and function. Remember, structure and function in life sciences is very important. Outer ear, that's the pinna. It directs the sound waves to the eardrum. And this is the outer ear. Then I tell you about the middle ear. Remember, it's filled with air. It's filled with air. This one is also filled with air. Your outside ear doesn't have water in it. If it's got water in, then there's something wrong. Okay. And then you've got your inner ear. Yeah. And there's where all the balance things happen, and your organ of Corti is here, converting the stimulus into a nerve impulse to go to your auditory nerve. So this is a very important part of your ear, right? So, but you must know the structure and function. So you need to know these little blocks. Okay. Then hearing, yeah, they show you exactly how to study the ear. And if you know this, you can answer this question. It's usually 7 marks, but they can ask maybe just one part. Pinna, and then it will direct the sound, like we said here on top, into the ear. The tympanium will then vibrate. The vibrations will go through the ossicles. You must know your ossicles. Remember, this is air. This is air, and this is liquid. Another thing, these are sound waves. Sound waves. These are vibrations. And when this little stirrup goes in and out, it causes um, pressure waves in this liquid, because this is liquid all through this place. It's liquid. So it's pressure waves. What learners did last year and the year before is they would talk about sound waves here or vibrations there or vibrations here. It's wrong. Then you don't get that marks, even though you are talking about the correct structures and everything. But if you talk about vibrations here, you lose the marks. Right. If you talk about sound waves here, you lose the marks. And obviously you must know what this tube is for. It's the eustachian tube. And what does it do? It will regulate the balance on both, or equalize the balance on both sides of your tympanium. So when you've got a cold of something and this thing swells shut, then you have a problem. You cannot equalize anymore, and then you will have pain, and your tympanic membrane will pain a lot. You'll get a lot of ear pain because the air pressure inside here is not the same as the air pressure inside there, and then you'll have pain. That's why you need a eustachian tube. It opens up in your throat. All right, and then they just tell you here about all these structures and the functions. Okay, so perfect for you. Here's the other part, Phil, and I must say learners do very well in this question every year. It's just those children who confuses the vibrations and the sound waves. They do very well if they ask them sound, but this part, balance, I don't know. Children can't get this one right. They confuse the crista and the macula. Now the crista comes in this little bubbles here in the semicircular canals, the ampulla. The crystals are in there. And the macula is in the utriculus and the sulculus here. Okay. So now you must know. The crista will be stimulated, right, by changes in direction and speed of movement. This is when you run faster, or you run and you walk. You don't even have to run. You walk and you change your direction. Okay. So that is crista. And a way to remember this with acid. Ampulla, crista, change in direction and speed. Or just, the C can be for change and crista. Okay. So acids, that's why I make the I small, because it doesn't mean anything here. But it's just a word to remember. Acid, crista, direction and speed. Ampulla was in the old days, we also gave a mark for ampulla, but they don't. These days I see they don't give marks for ampulla, but write it, people. Nothing can go wrong if you write ampulla. The crista in the ampulla will be stimulated by the change in direction and speed. Okay. Then macula in the sulculus and utriculus are stimulated by changes in position of the head. Position of the head, you look up and down. So you don't fall on your face when you look up and down. Imagine every time you look down, you fall on your face. That will be will cause harm to your head and face. No, we don't want that. So that's where your macula comes in. Right. So just some is just to remember this one. Sulculus, utriculus, maculae, position of the head. Right. It's just little ways. If that doesn't work for you, then find another way, but don't mix the two up, because they always ask either one of the two or both. Right. And we pick up every single year. Children mix them up. But the thing that they have in common is that, remember, they're little sensory cells. So what do? They convert the stimulus into an impulse. Both of them do that. And then they will transfer this impulse via the auditory canal, both of them do that, to the cerebellum. You can't say brain. If you say brain here, we think you don't know where it goes. Ballum sounds like balance, ballum. Remember, balance, ballum. The cerebellum, balance. Not the cerebrum, the cerebellum. Right, can't say brain here. They look for cerebellum. Okay, what's the hearing infections we can have? Middle infection, this part here, when there's pus and infection, and there's a lot of bacteria in there, they give you antibiotics. And sometimes if you have it a lot, especially babies or toddlers, they will put a little little microscopic pipe there in there. They call it a grommet, and that will drain all the pus out. All right. So grommet is actually also something I see often. They often ask this one in different ways. Then deafness, that's when you have an injury here. They can give you a cochlear implant in the cochlea, né? Or hearing aids, sometimes you wear it outside your ear just to amplify the sound. It amplifies the sound. So it depends on which one they ask, but they don't ask it in that detail. You must just know what hearing aids and cochlear implants are. Right. Then you finish with the nervous system, people, then you know everything. I just want to show you the endocrine system. It's 34 marks. This page is extremely important for you. Extremely. It's got all the hormones you need with it. The hypothalamus, ADH. What does ADH do? It works on the kidney. It controls concentration of water. Thyroid gland, they show you where it is and what it does. Adrenal gland, there it is. They show you what it secretes and what it does. Pituitary gland, this little pea-like thingy in your brain. Look at all the hormones are being secreted there and their functions, hormone and functions. Pancreas there, that will be your glucagon and insulin, and then testes and ovary, which you've done already with human reproduction. Right, you must know this page. This page, you must know it. Okay, this is just negative feedback where they tell you if there's imbalance. Just know the steps, all right? And then they've got thyroxine. You didn't do thyroxine last year. So they tell you exactly, yeah, you can choose. Am I going to study with a table or am I going to study with a flow diagram? Both, it's the same. Depends on how you learn. If you like this way more, then you use this way. But it's exactly the same thing. And here's the opposite, right? So yeah, it's when it decreases, and the other one was where it increased it. And then we have our glucose levels. And people, yeah, I just want to make you aware of the three words: glucose, glycogen, glucagon. If you make any spelling error here, they won't give you the mark because they say you don't know which one is which one. Because some children will hear now glycagon and glucagon and so on. Then they mark it wrong. Right. The spelling of these three words are very important. Make sure that you know which one is the hormone and which one is the stored form of glucose and what is glucose. Right. Again, here's a whole nice flow chart. If you're a visual person, this works. But if you like tables, there's the tables. You can choose which one. It's the same thing, just in different formats. Right. Then they have this one, carbon dioxide levels with your medulla oblongata, step by step by step by step. And it's only one way your carbon dioxide levels will become too much, not the other way around, just too much. What will happen then? Okay. Here's the kidneys. These two homeostasis is kidneys. So osmoregulation, water balance in your body, right? And then they say blood has less water than normal or blood has more water than normal. And the steps, or you can just do your flow chart, depends on your abilities. Yes, salt balance, aldosterone, too much, too little, and the flow chart. Oh, I love this, people. There's no other way to study this. This is absolutely fantastic. I don't know who thought this out, but really it's good. Here you can see hot day. There's a little sun. There's your blood vessels. Can you see they are widened or dilated, right? So more blood will go to the skin. More heat will be lost. You must say more, ne? And more blood is sent to the sweat glands. More sweat is released. Can you see? He has more of everything. Then here's on a cold day. Can you see it's constricted now? It's small. So less blood will go. Less heat will be lost. Less blood will be sent to the sweat glands and less sweat will be. You can't say no. Never ever say no here. It will be less. Okay. Can you see? This will take you maybe 2 minutes to study and remember. If you can remember these diagrams, it will, with a little sun and that little umbrella, it will help you so much. And that's thermoregulation. Then the plant hormones one, they tell you exactly what's phototropism, geotropism, what is the role of auxins in phototropism and the role of auxins in geotropism. You need to know this, okay? And yeah, now let's go to the other big one. That will be human reproduction. Before I forget, reproduction in vertebrates is only 8 marks. Can you see? It's only 8 marks. Believe this will last. But here in this table, they've got all the things that you need to know, right? I must say I like the DBE's textbook if you have it. Their definitions to me is a little bit more updated, but this is also good, right? Just remember with ovipary, the legs are laid outside, and the embryo develops outside the mother's body. They say hatching, that actually means the embryo is now developing outside the body and then hatches. Okay, that's sort of a new take on it, but it's still the same thing. So there's two things here, right? The eggs are laid and the embryo is developing outside the body. Okay, where ovovivipary, the young develop from the eggs inside the mother's body. Right, can you see outside the mother's body? Inside. Vivipary, that's us inside the mother's body with a placenta. Okay, that's what I want to say then. Let's get to this one. 41 marks, people. 41 marks. This is what you do secondly next weekend when you study for your paper one, because paper one this year is very early and you need to already prepare now, right? If you can do it this weekend, it will be better. Do nervous system this weekend and reproduction this weekend, right? And I'm showing you, it's not going to take you so long. But people, if you leave it for the exam that week, you're going to struggle. You're not going to remember all of this. It's a lot of topics that you must remember. Okay. So let's look. Let me zoom in a little bit again. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Yeah. Right, this firstly the picture, you need to know it from the front and the side, but I mean if you know it from the side you should be able to figure it out from the front. Now what have changed since this book was written is that we now talk about the accessory glands having the same functions. We don't ask you anymore what's the prostate's function alone. We will ask you the all three of them together. Right. But you must still know where the prostate gland is. There's a prostate gland. The one that looks like a little leaf is your seminal vesicle. And that little pea-sized thing here is the Cowper's gland. But all three of them will secrete alkaline fluid to neutralize the vagina pH. Will secrete mucus to help the sperm to move. And will secrete nutrients so that the sperm have energy to move. All right, so that's all three of them, the functions together. So it's not separate anymore. Okay, that has changed. But the rest is the same. So this is sperm duct or vas deferens, right? It will transport the sperm away from the epididymis. This thing looks like little hair on a little face here. But that's the testes and that is the epididymis. That's where the sperm cells go to mature. And when they finish maturing and ejaculation takes place, they will move up this sperm duct or vas deferens, where they get this accessory glands will now add all their liquids, right? So now it becomes the semen, basically. And then it goes through the urethra. That's the other problem children have. Urethra is this part here, not ureter. This is from the bladder. These are the little pipes coming from the bladder. It's not the same thing. And then children write this and it's marked wrong because it means something different. So your spelling here must also be correct. Okay, you must just check. Oh, yeah. And another fault or mistake the learners make is the following. They say that the scrotum is keeping the testes at 2 degrees Celsius. Now, people, that means you've got a little fridge down there. 2 degrees Celsius is very cold. Can you imagine if your scrotum was 2 degrees Celsius? You can keep your cold drink cool there. You can feel, it's near freezing point. No, it is 2 degrees below 37, below your body temperature. Right, it's not 2 degrees Celsius. Oh, that will be like icy cold, and it's there for protection as well. It protects the testes, but that's the structure and function here. Okay. Then they talk about the sperm cell. Another thing that they like to either draw or you must draw it, or there's something wrong with the sperm cell. So you must know the structure because they draw it without something and they ask you what's wrong with it. Okay. So, and here, can you see here's a name and the function. Name, function, name, function. You need to know these functions. They ask it. And this will take you what? 2 minutes to remember? It's not so much. Right. Let's go to the female part. Yes, this is an important thing. I've seen it in all the exams. I must be honest with you. They love this structure. You must know that this is the fallopian tube, the ovarian. The uterus is over here. The cervix is here up high, and the vulva here is at the bottom, and that's the vagina, right? And you must know that the uterus is flexible. This muscle is flexible. It can stretch out because the baby will grow in here. And it's also very strong, the uterine walls, because it needs to contract during birth. That's stuff that you need to know, right? But what children do here wrong, I'm just going to tell you, endometrium, that part there, the endometrium, that lining, they call the uterine wall. It's not the uterine wall. It is the lining. There's the uterine wall. There. That is the endometrium. Just know the difference, ne? Okay, so you need to know all the structures and what they are doing there. Right, what is their function? Now we have the menstruation. Now, they've made a lot of effort here. They drew it here. They're showing you what's happening in the ovary and what is happening in the uterus. So you can see there's menstruation. Here the follicle is growing. There's ovulation. There's the corpus luteum. And now this endometrium lining is very thick. Okay. I also explain it in table form for you. Everything is in table form there. Right. But okay, I like the graph, so I'm going to explain to you in the graph. Okay, but if you're not this visual person, go to the table or go to the other one. Okay, so you look at this graph. The first top part here is the pituitary gland, and that's in your brain. Ne? So this is the brain part. Then the follicle part is in the ovaries. Then the estrogen and the progesterone is secreted by your ovaries. And this is the endometrium lining or the endometrium, and that's in your uterus. So it's a brain, ovaries, uterus. Okay, but let's start from day one. FSH, it's what it says, follicle stimulating hormone. It stimulates the follicles, the primary follicles here, to start to develop. It grows, and it becomes a mature Graafian follicle. These follicles, as they grow, they secrete estrogen. So they secrete estrogen. Can you see the estrogen is going up? The levels are going up, 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 up. And as the estrogen levels are going up, your endometrium lining is now becoming thicker. It's becoming thicker. So it stimulates the endometrium to become thicker. Right. So that's your follicle stimulating hormone. Can you see it's not like much higher, but it is increasing. Here you can see it's not so high. Okay, it's lower. Now, just before ovulation, luteinizing hormone is secreted by your brain. So your brain is actually controlling this whole process, né? The pituitary gland. So it's secreting LH. What does LH do? And you will always see it will go like this and whoop, up, down, and never again you see. It's just like a little whoops and then nothing. Now, when that little whoops happens, you've got ovulation. What is ovulation? It's when this Graafian follicle bursts open and this little ovum is like blasted into the fallopian tube at a hectic speed on its way to look for a little sperm cell. Ne? And what happens now is a corpus luteum is formed. Now, corpus in Roman means dead. So it's because it was a Graafian follicle, now it's a dead follicle. But it's still secreting progesterone. Can you see the progesterone was very low here? And now it's climbing because this corpus luteum is secreting progesterone. So if they ask you what does luteinizing hormone do, it causes ovulation, but it also causes the formation of a corpus luteum because it's the luteinizing hormone, corpus luteum. It's causing a corpus luteum to form. Okay, now you've got high progesterone levels. What does progesterone do to the endometrium? Whoop, can you see? It becomes thicker, 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 and more glandular and more vascular. What is vascular? Vascular is vessels, more blood vessels and glands in there. So that if there's implantation, if this little ovum was lucky and she got a sperm cell and now fertilization took place, she will implant into this nice thick endometrium and get nutrients for the baby. But in this case, it didn't happen because the corpus luteum is now degenerating. It's becoming smaller. And when it becomes smaller, less and less and less progesterone is now secreted. And then we go to the next cycle. We start from the start again. We go from the start again because now it's at these levels here again. And when it starts at these levels again, the menstruation will take place. The endometrium lining will be shed. Know that, and we saw in this exams that you guys don't know the difference between menstruation and menstruation cycle. This is a cycle, people. So when they finish there, yeah, we go again, day 0. And then we start 28 days, then we go back. That's a cycle. But this part here is menstruation. And then just another thing, the negative feedback, children also don't know that. While this little ovum is now there in the fallopian tube looking for a nice sperm cell, the progesterone stays high because it's being secreted there. And, it's a danger if FSH is now secreted, because if FSH is now secreted, another little follicle can form, another ovum pops out, maybe 2 days later or whatever, and now you've got 2 different blastocysts implanting at different times, and that will be a disaster. So what happens is this progesterone inhibits your brain or your pituitary gland to secrete follicle stimulating hormone. We don't want another follicle now to develop while this guy's in play. Nah. So, no, it inhibits the follicle stimulating hormone to be secreted. Right. And the moment it starts to go down, what happens? FSH is secreted again. You see, so these 2 hormones work with each other in a negative feedback loop. Okay. Everything I said is this. Then we have the little baby here, or the little fetus here. What must you know here on this diagram? Firstly, this is ovulation. Now we've got our little ovum there. We don't call them egg cells anymore. We call them ovums now. Then this one got her sperm cell. The moment that you see that, that's fertilization. 2 nuclei will then fuse, and then we got a zygote. Zygote's 2 cells. Now it starts with mitosis. You must know it's mitosis. Mitosis. Not meiosis. Meiosis happened, yeah. That's now mitosis. Now it's dividing, and we get a ball of cells. We call the morula. The morula. Then it divide, and then we get a hollow ball of cells, which we call the blastocysts, not the embryo. You must just fix that. It's, like I said, this book is a little bit old here and there. Things are not lacquer. Ne? Then that hollow ball, that blastocyst will go and implant into the endometrium. It will start to grow, and then you will have a placenta over here where the embryo will get the nutrients from, and gas exchange will take place here. And you must know that this is the amniotic fluid. What's the function of it? It's shock absorber, prevent the embryo from drying out, it prevents mechanical injury. Remember, when you walk as a woman and this little baby's inside, if there was no liquid, that poor baby would bump his head all the time, ne? And shame, everybody would have been stupid. We don't want that, ne? So, and the chorion is the outside layer there. Now, what's nice here is they've got everything down here in the paragraph, okay? Talk about fertilization, blah, 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 blah. What I want you to see is after implantation, the embryo produces many finger-like structures called villi from the outer membrane of the embryo, which is known as the chorion, chorionic villi. That's what's going into the placenta. That's how your placenta is formed. The villi grow into tissue in the uterus and form the placenta. And then the placenta is attached the embryo to the umbilical cord. It has 2 umbilical arteries which carry the deoxygenated blood from the embryo towards us. So that's how the baby breathes. The deoxygenated blood means it doesn't have a lot of oxygen. Goes through these 2 arteries to the mother's placenta, or to the mother's blood, and the vein, one vein, will carry the oxygenated blood and nutrients to the baby. Okay, now, to remember it, if you take this umbilical cord and you turn it around, like there's umbilical cord, now you turn it around, you look from it from the front and you cut it. There will be 2 arteries, there, 2 arteries and 1 vein. Just remember it's a little face with 2 eyes and 1 vein, 1 smile. Okay, so then you remember it's 1 vein and 2 arteries, not the other way around. It's not 2 veins and 1 artery. Okay, so just remember AAV. Yeah, the rest we talked about. Don't study this. This is not in the syllabus anymore. Okay, that's human reproduction finished, people. Can you see how easy Mind the Gap is? Now you've got all that knowledge in your head. Right, now we're going to go and look at some questions and see if we have to worry. I can tell you, if you are here to this afternoon, it tells me that you are committed to your studies and you want to do well. it tells me that you will do well. You must just believe in yourself. That's the only thing you need to do is just believe in yourself, people. Right. I'm going to say this and I'm going to give you like I cannot hear you. So what I'll do is just give you like a second or two to think, and then I'll give you the answer. Right. Which structure protects the entrance of the vagina? The cervix, the vulva, anus, urethra. Okay, let's look at it. Urethra, remember that's the little in the penis, that part that goes through the penis there. Anus, oh, no, hell no. I hope you didn't think that because that's part of your digestive system. Cervix is the one on top, just below the uterus. So it's the vulva. Okay. In humans, fertilization usually takes place in the fallopian tubes. Yes, it is in the fallopian tubes. It's not in the vagina, not in the uterus, and not in the ovary. If you don't know that, you did not study. And then you're going to fail. You must study. Right. Which part of the brain is responsible for voluntary movement? Remember now, voluntary movement. Remember what I said. I hope you remember when we studied. Cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, hypothalamus. Now remember, this is hunger, thirst, emotions, all those things. This is breathing, heart rate. This one is the balance one, and coordination. This one, people, your cerebrum. But that you will know when you study. I'm going to say that quite a lot. This is not coming to me through a light wave or something. I studied it. Which disease occurs when blood sugar levels are too high? Okay, this is the endocrine system, but I think you should know this from grade 11. Diabetes, people, diabetes. You should know this from grade 11 in any case. Then the structure that joins two hemispheres in the brain is called the, yes, corpus callosum. They actually made this paper quite a lot of A's, but corpus callosum. It's not the hypothalamus. It's not those. Right. Let's have a look. Can you see it's easy? Now we look at this type of question. Oh, it looks so intimidating, but it's not. Just start from the start, people. Don't just go here. Read. The pupillary reflex is the ability of a typical human eye to adjust to different light intensity. So they even tell you light. Yeah, they give you it's light. It's not distance. Okay. Remember, pupil is the round thing, the iris that you are looking at with the little hole in it. Which combination of the processes will occur in a typical human eye when light intensities change from dark to bright light? So bright light, what must happen to the pupil? Yes, the pupil must constrict. You don't want to fry your retina. You don't want a fried retina, no. So you must have a small retina. Small, not a big one. Okay, remember now, if you want to have small, think about your muscles, If your radial muscles relax, they become long and they push the middle side down. That's why they all become smaller. And your circular muscles, if this one is relaxed, then your circular muscles must be contracted because they become fat. And when they become fat, they take up more space and they push this little inside down. So radial muscles contract. No. Circular muscles contract. Yes. Pupil constrict. Yes, that is becoming smaller. Radial muscles relax. Yes. Circular muscles relax. No. Pupil dilates. No, that means it becomes bigger. So it is 2, 4. No. What did I say? 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, and 4. There it is. A. Okay. 2, 3, and 4. And you choose A. Okay, so that's not so difficult. Just think, people. Just breathe. And then if you studied, you shall be able to figure this out. Okay, so, but studying is the baseline. If you didn't do the baseline, then, it's prayer that you must do there. A lot of prayer. Don't cry. Just pray. Right, which of the following can be used to treat a severe middle ear infection? Middle ear? Wax? No, that's in your outer ear, in your auditory canal. Grommets? Yes. Hearing aid? No, that will help nothing. Cochlear implant will help nothing. It's grommets. Remember, that's a microscopic tube that they put in the tympanic membrane to drain the liquid. So definitely that one. Okay, I'm not going to do this. This is endocrine system, and we didn't do that in detail today, this afternoon. Okay, now let's look at this one. The diagrams below represent a neuron with a myelin sheath, myelinated, and a neuron without myelin sheath, unmyelinated, right? And it's not drawn according to cells. So can you see now this one has got the myelin sheath, and this one has got nothing. So no insulation, nothing here. And immediately, if it doesn't have insulation, the impulse will travel much slower. And it's an illness, right? So your nervous system, your electrical wiring in your body is not going to work so nicely anymore. Identify the type of neuron shown in the diagrams. Well, it looks like a little tree. It's a motor neuron. Give one visible reason. Don't say it is a little tree. Just say that there's many dendrites here, because remember the sensory neuron doesn't have that, and the cell body, and yeah, the axon that's ending in axon terminal ends. Why can't I remember the word now? Okay, and it must be visible. When they tell you visible is what you see here. Okay, what you see here, not what you know. So you must see, okay, well, I know this, but now what can I see here? Describe the function of the type of neuron identified in this question. So this one here. Now, the function is most to take impulses from where to where? From the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, to the muscles, or the rest of the body, the muscles. Okay? Use the letters ABC to indicate the direction of which an impulse moves through the neuron. Right, people, here's the letters. Doesn't help you go there. There's nothing there. Look, where's the letters? Okay, we know now. It goes through the dendrite, through the axon, and out. So it will be C, A, B. So you can just say, let me just write it there, C, A, B. Okay. Then name the disorder associated with degeneration of the myelin sheaths in neurons. That's multiple sclerosis. You'll see it in your exam guideline. I know that one is not in the mind the gap, but remember, you're going to use your exam guideline. So whatever is not in the mind the gap, just not a lot. It's not a lot. Just go and look in your book. That's your book that you worked in at school. But if you don't have a book, I know some of you don't have a book because you didn't work a lot. Hopefully you have that textbook of yours, the DBE one that's online, or you have some or other textbook. If you don't have, then it's now time to go to your teacher and ask them, please help me. I need a textbook. Okay. But you must make a plan now. There's not a lot of time left. Okay, then here we go, the brain. The diagrams below show parts of the human nervous system. There's the brain with the whole brain. And here's a reflex arc. The structure is the arc. Action is when the action takes place. Okay. Now let's see what they ask here. Name the branch of the nervous system represented by the parts. So we've got a brain and a part of a spinal cord. So it's central nervous system. Central nervous system is brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is the one which goes out to your arms and your legs and the rest of your body from your central nervous system. Okay. So it goes out. Peripheral means going out to the periphery. Central means is in the middle, in the center, Mr. Fenter. It's central. Give the letter and name. If they ask you this, please answer the question. The question is asking letter and name. They want to see, do you know where it is and what its name is? You can't just give the name or the letter. If you just give the letter, you get 1 out of 2. You must give both. So balance and coordination, remember that's that one there. Ne? So it's B and cerebellum. So 2 marks there. Okay. Control of breathing, that's our medulla oblongata. C, medulla oblongata, for your 2 marks there. Say, for example, you can't remember, but you can remember where it is. At least you get 1 mark. Control of skeletal muscles, obviously our cerebrum. A, cerebrum. Okay, that was easy. People, if you get easy questions like this and you can't get them right, you didn't study. You didn't study. You must study. This, when you get this, it's a gift from heaven to you. This is really easy. You must know this. Describe the pathway of an impulse from part D through the spinal cord to part E. This is a reflex action, people. So now all you talk about is the receptor, sensory neuron through the dorsal root of the spinal nerve via the synaptic gap to the interneuron, through the synaptic gap to the motor neuron. It travels to the effector. You just know that little rhyme. It's in Mind the Gap. It's all there. And then you get, and the children really did good in this question last year, 6 marks. Most of the learners got 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 6, right? So they did very well in this one. The only thing that last year what happened was they said that this is the spinal nerve. You must say dorsal root of the spinal nerve, and nobody did that. So yeah, they got 5 out of 6. Describe how the human eye accommodates. Now look at this question. Accommodate distant vision. Immediately. I forgot to show you that. But when you look for, here's my hands now, showing the lens. Let me just zoom out again. Let me zoom out. Here's the lens. Ne? All right. When it's near, it's fat and round. Let me just take this also away that you can see what I mean because I'm dressed very thickly today. So that's convex, very convex. It's fat and round and more convex. But the moment you look at the something far, it becomes flatter, flat, near, flat, near, flat, near. But we don't say flat, we say less convex. Okay. So immediately you must remember that what I showed you. Now you can also practice that with your hands. So for distance, we have flat. So what happened to the flat one? The suspensory ligaments were pulling on it. Remember, the suspensory ligaments were pulling on it. So why did they pull on it? Because the muscle became smaller. And why is it smaller? Because it relaxed. So the ciliary muscle relaxed. The suspensory ligaments became taut. The tension on your lens became more. And the lens became less convex. And the light rays were broken less. Okay, so that's what they wanted there for 5 marks. Okay, ear. Let's look at our ear here. One of the main functions of the human ear is hearing. This is an easy question. When you get something like this, you also say, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, sound waves. There I go. This is obviously vibration. I hope you know that by now. And this will be pressure waves. Okay, but they don't tell you anything. And then they've now labeled this structure there, which we know is the eustachian tube. All right. Give the name. Let me just zoom in again because maybe some of you can't. Okay, I'm wrong way around. There you are. Give the name of the part of the ear that performs each of the following functions. You see, structure and function. That's why you need to know. Study the diagram with the functions. Direct sound waves to the auditory canal. Yes, the auditory canal. So who's now directing sound waves? The pinna. The pinna. How would you know that? You studied. That's how you know it. There's no other way of knowing it if you didn't study. Convert sound stimulus into nerve impulse. Now, the only way where there's impulses involved is at the end, and that will be your organ of Corti. Inside this cochlea, there's an organ of Corti, and it converts the stimulus into nerve impulses. Transmit vibrations from the tympanic membrane to the oval window. Now, people, there's the oval window and there's the tympanic membrane, which is in the middle of them. The ossicles, right. A middle ear infection, here we go with grommets or antibiotics again. You see, that's why you must know that the illnesses can result in production of excess fluid. If part W becomes blocked, the fluid cannot drain naturally in your throat, and a buildup of fluid causes an increase in pressure in your middle ear, which may interfere with hearing. Identify part W. You can get this mark, people. Eustachian tubes, very easy. Give the name of the small tube that's surgically inserted. That's so easy. In the tympanic membrane. It's the grommet. I told you, they like to ask the grommet. They ask it in all the different ways they can. Let's quickly see here. I'm not going to do too much here anymore. I just want to go to the balance ones. Okay. Just to show. Give the letters of 2 parts that are normally filled with fluid. Which are the ones that filled with fluid? Is it this one? No. Is it this one? Oh, no. It is The semicircular canals, yes, so it's C. And it is D. What did they ask for? Letters. Did they ask you to name them? Did they say semicircular canals and cochlea? No. So if you wrote semicirculars and cochlea, you get 0. You get 0 because you didn't answer the question. What did the question ask for? Letters. Don't make that stupid mistake, okay? I've seen people doing those stupid things, and I get very angry because it's stupid. Read the question. Describe how balance, cerebellum, is restored when there is a change in the speed and direction. Assets, ne? Assets, speed and direction. Who is part of that whole process? The crista, So you need to talk about the crystal will be stimulated. It will convert the stimulus into an impulse, and the impulse will then be transmitted to the via the auditory nerve. That's another mark, to the cerebellum. Oh, and children try to cheat. Yeah. Oh, we've laughed. They will change this word to cerebellum. Cerebellum. Because they want to tell us now, we can't spell it, but we're on to you. Don't try to now lie because you can't remember what's the cerebellum or the cerebrum. Because they make all sort of things here so that we say, oh, shame, it's spelling. No, oh, shame here. You must spell it correctly. We don't feel sorry for you here. Yeah, if you don't write cerebellum correctly, we are on to you. You lose that mark, okay? So make sure that you know it's cerebellum and not cerebellum. Okay. I. Let's quickly look at an eye question. The diagram below represents the internal structure of a human eye, and there it is. If you looked at your Mind the Gap, you would have known what all these structures are. And here's our famous give the letter and name, because they want to know, do you know where it is and what it's called? Contains the highest concentration of cones. Obviously, the yellow spot there. So it's C, yellow spot. Is a transparent layer at the front of the eye that causes a refraction of light. Remember the cornea, people, here in the front. So it's G, and it's the cornea. It is the highest refraction, the highest breaking of light happens at your cornea. Okay, not only the lens break light, your cornea as well. Prevents a reflection of light in the eye. That's the one here at the back, just behind the retina. We get the choroid. Oh, and the children mess up this one as well. Choroid, chorion. Where did you hear this one? This one is with the baby, that little baby in the Bible, ne? The outside layer is called the chorion. This is definitely not an embryo, it's your eye. Your eye cannot be the chorion. It is the choroid for the eye. Okay. And I'm telling you this because we see this every year. Then give the letters of the parts that will cause change in the shape of H during accommodation. Now you must think, what is accommodation again? It is distance. So it will be about your lens. So let's see who's now, they want the letters of the parts. They're not asking for names. They're asking for letters. And they're saying it's changing part H, the lens. So who's going to change the shape of the lens? The suspension ligaments, I, and your E, that little muscle there, the ciliary muscle. Okay. Can you see how easy it becomes if you just study a little bit, people? Not a little bit. You must now actually study a lot. Okay. Okay. Some tips on how to look at a case study. Read your questions first. It helps you to focus because now I've heard a rumor that learners don't read this. How can you answer questions if you don't even read the passage? What? You are not some kind of Einstein. Well, clearly not because you failed. So, you need to read this, but let's go. According to the passage, you must read it. Which type of cataract is associated with the disorder of the pancreas? So now when you read it, you must look at the disorder of the pancreas. Use information in the passage. That's the instruction. To explain why cataracts cause vision loss. Okay, so we must talk about cataracts and vision loss. But we must use it in the passage. Now we go. Cataracts are primarily formed when protein structures in the lens of the eye start to disintegrate and clump together. This is how our cataracts form. They're telling you. So this will link, yeah. This, because why, how does it form? There. Cataracts is the most common cause of blindness and main cause of vision loss in people. Two types of cataracts that occur are nuclear cataracts and subcapsular cataracts. The nuclear cataracts, the cataracts form in the central region of the lens and gradually spread outwards. The subcapsular cataracts, the cataracts develop at the back of the lens and is common in people with diabetes. Aha, where did we see that there is a disorder? According to the passage, which type of cataract is associated with a disorder? There's a disorder, and it will be subcapsular. So the answer is subcapsular, not diabetes, ne? Please just read the question. It says, which type of cataract? Don't say diabetes, you must say subcapsular. Then use the information in the passage to explain why cataracts cause vision loss. Now we've read it here. So you start off with it's primarily formed when protein structures in the lens of the eye start to disintegrate and clump together. You get 1 mark already out of 5 for that. Just by writing that. You see, don't be lazy, read. Now you don't have a clue further, at least you had 1 mark. But now you've studied that little table that I showed you in Mind the Gap. And you've seen that the lenses become, because now this stuff is clumped together, the proteins. So what happens to the lens? It becomes cloudy or milky. Second mark there. And they want to know, why is there vision loss? So light cannot go through this milky lens. So no light will reach the retina and no impulses will form and no impulses will go via it. Can you see? It's easy. Once you know how sight works and what the eye looks like and all those things. But you need to study, people. If you don't study, you won't know this. You won't know this, but at least you will get 1 mark here maybe and 1 mark here. If you just look at the questions and read the passage, then at least you get 2 out of 6 for just reading. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, this is plants. I didn't look at plants this afternoon. The following statement describes some parts of the human sperm cell. Many mitochondria that provides energy of movement, a tail that moves in whip-like motion, acrosome that contains enzymes to digest the jelly layer of the ovum, and the nucleus contains 23 chromosomes. Yes, all of them are functions of the human sperm cell. Remember, I showed you the picture with the functions. It's there, all of them. Which combination of statements are structurally adaptations that ensure that the sperm cell can move towards an ovum? Read the question. Read the question. Which of these structural adaptations causes this sperm cell to move towards the ovum? Does a nucleus with 23 chromosomes do that? No, it doesn't. It's not for movement. It's not there for movement. It's there for your DNA and all that. Acrosome that contains enzyme to digest the jelly layer of the ovum. Does that cause movement? Ask yourself. The acrosome with the enzymes that's now digesting this ovum, is that causing movement? Because that's what they want. Movement towards the ovum. No, it doesn't. A tail that moves in a whip-like motion. Yes, this causes movement. This one you can take. Many mitochondria that provides energy. Yes, of course. They even tell you for movement. So the first two. It's the first two that is doing the movement thing. And that will be number B. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. See, it's not so difficult. You must just, what must you do? Study. You must study. Which of the following events take place during oogenesis? Remember I told you there's this wonderful document. We call it the exam guideline. And here is oogenesis. Exactly, word for word for word for word. And it says one cell inside the follicle enlarges and undergoes meiosis. Of the 4 cells that are produced, only one survives to form a mature haploid ovum. All right, now what are they asking here? Let me just zoom out again. Right. Which of the following events take place during oogenesis? 3 daughter cells from meiosis will degenerate. The diploid germinal epithelial cells lining of the seminiferous tubules. People, where do we get these seminiferous tubules? Is that in a ovum? No, it's not. It is in our testes. So, oh, hey, no, it's not this one. 4 daughter cells survive to form a mature ova. 4 daughter cells survive. We just saw no. So, not this one. 1 daughter cell will mature into a sperm cell. Yo, imagine during oogenesis, because oogenesis is female, ne? To form the ovum. Can you imagine if your ovaries now all of a sudden get sperm cells? Oh, I don't even want to think about it. That's a disaster. Cannot be that one. Can only be this one. So if you're not sure, you can eliminate. Right, you just eliminate. But how would you now know about the I cannot say that word now, seminiferous? You need to study. Yes, I'm going to say that every time. Okay, this one. Oh, what a nice question. Let me zoom out again. And we all know that this is the female reproductive system. If you don't know that, where were you the whole year? Where were you if you don't know that? Okay, it is labeled. Which one of the following combination is correct for the normal pregnancy? Site of fertilization. Now, you've seen now, we've talked about it. There's a little ovum, boop, it's popped in here, and it moves here in search of a sperm in the fallopian tube. This is where fertilization happens. It's also in Mind the Gap. Yeah, it cannot happen there. Cannot happen there. Yeah, it's on its way out, so it doesn't help. So yeah, in the fallopian tube. So now you must look in the side of fertilization P. So there's 2 pieces. It's one of the 2 yeah. It's either this P or that P. So let's just like make a little mark there. Site of implantation. We know that must be in your endometrium. Is that your endometrium? Yes. No, that's the uterus. Is that it? No, that's the vagina. There's the endometrium. So it's Q. So now we know this one must be Q. There's Q. There's 2 Qs, but this one doesn't fit, doesn't have a P, so it must be this one. So yes, it's number C. Okay. Can you see? Just reason it out, but you had to study. In which part does the zygote develop into a morula? Remember now, that little ovum here, it's been fertilized, then it's a zygote, then it's a morula. So it's in the fallopian tube again. P. Okay. Following is a list of male reproductive parts. There's a prostate gland, seminal vesicles, urethra, Cowper's gland. Can you see these are your 3 accessory glands? Which one of the following combinations is responsible for the formation of semen? Remember, semen is where they excrete all those nutrients, mucus, and alkaline fluids. So it will be the 3, these 3. That one is not forming anything. It's just transporting. It's a little tube that transported out of the penis. Right. So it is 1, 2, and 4. Okay, 1, 2, and 4. There it is, number B. Okay, can you see it's becoming easier? I hope it's becoming easier. This one caught out so many children last year. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, why is this now so difficult? Yeah, but I figured it out, people. I figured it out. Children don't read. They don't read. The diagram below represents a human sperm. You can sort of see this one is, there's a lot of things wrong here. Look at there's no acrosome here. Look, there's no mitochondria there. Shame. It's a little bit sickly, this one. This sperm is not structurally suitable for fertilization because of now we must see, absence of a nucleus no, there's the nucleus to provide genetic material. No, that one is wrong. Absence of an acrosome, and when children saw that, they just said B. But they didn't read further. They just said, absence, yes, it doesn't have an absence. Yes, there is no acrosome. But what does the rest of the statement say? 2, improve motility. What does motility mean? Motility means movement, to be able to move. Motility is to move. Now, does the acrosome have anything to do with movement? No, it doesn't. Presence of a long tail for the movement of the sperm. It does have. There's a tail. Absence of mitochondria to provide energy. Yes. If it doesn't have any energy, it's not going to swim all the way up into the fallopian tube. So that is the answer. And I'm telling you, most learners said this one because I didn't read further. Read, people. Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Okay, this is plants. We didn't do plants this afternoon, and this endocrine. Let's look at this one. Children actually did well in this question, I remember. The diagram, let me just focus. There you are. Let's maybe make it a little bit bigger. No, bigger. The diagram below represents a part of the female reproductive system. There you can see the ovary. Whoops. There's a little ovum being burst into the fallopian tube. Aha. There's already sperm waiting for her there. Nee. So, there's fertilization will be happening, yeah, because they are both here. And then you've got sperm there and the endometrium there. Identify part A, that will be your fallopian tube. B, where's B? Your ovary, yeah? Ovary. Give two characteristics of the endometrium that makes it suitable for implantation. Right? It is thick and glandular and vascular. Remember always, glandular, vascular. That is very important. Right. It's thick, glandular, and vascular. Visible reasons why there's now you must visible. It means what do you see here? Why there is an increased chance of fertilization in this female. Well, look at the picture. The ovum is already in the fallopian tube. She's not still waiting to be secreted there. And the sperm is already in the fallopian tube. So that will increase your chances of fertilization by 100%. Right. A lot of children said a lot of sperms. Yeah. What does that help? The sperm must be in the fallopian tube. Right. So that is why those two reasons were accepted. Then identify and describe the type of gametogenesis that leads to the formation of structure C. What did I say? Structure C is the ovum. Oogenesis. What did I say? Ooh, they love this question. Oogenesis. It will either be the one or the two, but I love it's gametogenesis. See, look there. What are they saying there? Gametogenesis that leads to the formation of structure C, and you studied so you know this is an ovum. Okay. So yeah, it's everywhere. Okay, this one is a little bit difficult, but let's see. In an ectopic pregnancy, the fertilized ovum can become implanted in part A. If this ovum, not the ovum, the fertilized ovum, the zygote or the blastocyst gets implanted here in the fallopian tube, this normally results in the death of the embryo. Yes, of course it will do, because that's not where they're supposed to be implanted, and may endanger the mother's life. Explain why. This is a very difficult question, but let's see if you can figure it out now because you've listened, hopefully. Explain why an ectopic pregnancy may result in the death of an embryo. Right. Why is this embryo dying? Let's just see. Is there any endometrial lining? No. There's no endometrial lining. So where is he going to get nutrients and gaseous exchange? He won't be able to have gaseous exchange or nutrients. So he's going to die. And the other thing is, can this fallopian tube, can it stretch like your uterus? No, it cannot stretch. So what's going to happen is this fallopian tube is going to burst. Okay. Only have three there. The male. The diagram below shows a side view. Okay, so this is a side view, but you can still more see that's now I can't remember the name, prostate gland, and that will be your Cowper's gland, and that will be your seminal vesicles, testes, all those things. Okay, identify parts labeled B. That will be, it's showing there, urethra, not ureta. F, where's F? That little thingy there, that little pea-sized gland there is your Cowper's gland. Give the name of the part that transports sperm away from the epididymis to the accessory glands. Remember, you must know what is the epididymis. Is that part there? Right. If you didn't study, you will not know that. So it's this part. Yeah, the vas deferens, the sperm duct. It's used to deposit sperm into the female. That will be your penis. Name 2 secretions from the accessory glands and describe how each secretion can improve sperm maturation and motility. Remember now, motility is movement. So you talk about the nutrients, right, that can give it energy. And you talk about the mucus that will give it easy to move. And you can, yeah, that's basically what you can talk about. It will not, alkaline does not come into sperm maturation and motility, because maturation means it's growing up, it's growing old. What does it need to grow up and grow old? Well, not old. Not old. Mature, to mature. Energy from nutrients. Okay, and motility will be the mucus. Right. Another side view, just this side, that side around. Okay. Let's see. Identify the parts. A, can you see? You can get marks, people. Yes, of us, their friends again. E, penis. Yo, these examiners like the penis. I don't know why. Explain the function of G. That's your scrotum. Remember what the scrotum does. It will protect the testes by keeping it outside, but it will also regulate the temperature so that healthy sperm is formed. And 2 degrees below body temperature, not 2 degrees. Ne? Can you see, name and describe the process which gametes are produced in part F4 marks? Spermatogenesis. Draw a diagram of the gamete produced. So a sperm cell. They want you to draw a sperm cell. You must know that. Draw a flow diagram showing the path of sperm cells during ejaculation. So all you have to do is draw it from where? During ejaculation. So you start from the testes. It will start there, F. Then it will go to A. Then it will go not to that secrete stuff in there. Then it will go to, this is not numbered. Okay, yeah. I can't see that anything else is numbered here. Okay. Do we have time? I don't think we have a lot of time left. All right, I just want to just quickly, I know this looks very, very complicated, but now if you looked at the mind the gap, this is in the ovary, this is in the blood. So they don't tell you where, is it in the brain, is it brain hormones or ovary hormones, but you can figure it out. And this is our endometrium again. Yeah? So in the diagram, identify part A, that will be your Graafian follicle. B, that will always be corpus luteum. Do you see, if you study, you will know this. It's not Greek, it is actually Roman. According to the diagram above, on which day did ovulation take place? There's ovulation. You must know what ovulation look like. It's 14 days. Can you see already 3 marks? 3 marks already. Just for knowing, just for studying. It's not so difficult. Give one visible reason for you. Okay, according to diagram above, on which day? Okay, well, okay. Give one visible reason for this answer. Then you just say, why did you say it's day 14? Because the ovum was expelled from the Graafian follicle. Then identify hormone X. Okay. Can you see that this hormone was low and now it goes up? And what happens? There is a corpus luteum and the endometrium is big. So it can only be progesterone. Okay. Explain the influence of hormone X on the uterus between day 14 and day 25. 14, there it is, and day 25. So this hormone, what does progesterone do? It makes the endometrium lining more, you must say more thicker, more glandular, more vascular. All these you could have answered by just studying the mind the gap. Okay, so you can get almost 7 out of 11 already. According to the diagram above, for how long did menstruation last? Remember, menstruation is this part where it gets smaller. So it's 4 days. Can you see how easy this question is? It's not difficult at all. Just by studying mind the gap. Describe the role of FSH in the menstrual cycle. Remember what I said. FSH will be secreted. It will make this forces primary follicle to develop or stimulate it to develop and grow into a Graafian follicle. Okay, people, I think our time is up. I hope that you have learned something this afternoon. Let me just go out of this view, stop sharing. I hope that you've learned something this afternoon.